Hi everyone and welcome to part 5 of the 40k Cardi Cal. This is the final part of the Cal, so your cardigan should well and truly be taking shape by now, which is very, very exciting. I cannot wait to see all your finished cardis. So in this part, we're going to be working on all our edging. So we're going to be starting off with our wrist cuffs, and then we will be working some edging around the inner part of our cardigan as well as along the bottom hem. Now, if you're following the 6 color option, you will want to now change to your chosen color number 6. For me, it is the Angora color in the Dirty DK. If you're only using 2 colors, you will now want to switch to color number 2. And if you're only using 1 color, then of course you will just continue using the same color that you have been throughout the entire cal. We are also going to be changing our hook size for this part. So we're dropping down to a 4mm hook for this because we want our ribbing to be nice and tight. So once you're ready to go, you're going to take your yarn, and we are starting off with a slip knot, of course. And now you're going to take your first sleeve, and you can technically join into whichever stitch you like, but I'm going to join into the stitch where we fastened off the last round of our sleeve just to keep all the seams in the same place. But again, you can join into any stitch, so it doesn't really matter. You also want to have the right side of your cardigan facing out, so you want to have that beautiful textured side on the outside. All right, so finding the stitch you want to join your yarn into, we're just going to join in with a slip stitch, and then we want to chain 11. So once you've chained up 11, we're going to kind of turn our work to the side because we're now going to be working along this way in this direction. So skipping that chain that is closest to your hook, we're going to find the second chain from our hook, and we're going into that stitch with a single crochet. Just like that. And we're now just going to complete 1 single crochet in every chain stitch. Once you've single crocheted into every stitch, you should have a stitch count of 10 because remember we skipped that very first chain stitch at the beginning. Now what we're going to do is find the next stitch on our sleeve, and we're going to go into that stitch with a slip stitch. We're then going to find the next stitch on the sleeve and go into that stitch with another slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. So we're now going to be working back along this way. So for this row, we're going to be completing 1 single crochet in every stitch, but we're going to be going into the back loop only. So if you turn your work over, you'll see little V's. You want to go into the loop that is furthest away from you. I also want to point out that because we did slip stitch twice, it's going to feel like you're skipping 2 stitches, but remember they're just the slip stitches. So we want to skip those 2 slip stitches and go into that first single crochet from the previous row. So going in through the back loop only and completing a single crochet, and we're just going to repeat that all the way to the end of the row. So 1 single crochet through the back loop only in every stitch. All right, so here I am at the end of that row. What I'm going to do now is chain 1 and turn my work. And we're now going to be working back along this way. So again, we're going to be going in through the back loop only with a single crochet in every stitch, all the way to the end of the row. Once you've reached the end of that row, you're now going to find the next stitch on your sleeve, and we are going in with a slip stitch. We're then finding the next stitch on our sleeve and going in with another slip stitch. Then we're chaining 1 and turning our work. And we're literally just going to repeat that same process all the way around until we get back to where we began. So you should eventually end up with the same amount of rows as you have stitches around your sleeve cuff. So for example, my final stitch count on my sleeve was 28. So by the time I'm back here at the beginning, I should have 28 rows for my sleeve cuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that off now, and I will meet you back here once we are back to where we started. All right, so I have now finished all my rows. So now what I'm going to do, obviously this still needs to be joined together, but what we're going to do is cut our yarn, but we're going to just leave a long enough tail that we've got enough to seam this edge. A few inches or so should be enough. Now we are going to turn our sleeve inside out. So you might need to remove your hook for this, just for now. And we've just turned our sleeve inside out. We can pop our hook back in now. Now I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. So we're going to be seaming down along this edge, and now all I'm going to do is slip stitch through both layers. So going into that first stitch, going into the first stitch on the other side, and slip stitching through both layers to join. And we're just going to repeat that all the way down this edge until we get to the end. All right, so here I am at the end. I've seamed all along that edge, as you can see there. Now all we're going to do is fasten off, so pull that yarn through. I probably could have left a little bit of a longer tail if I'm honest, but it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to fasten off that end. Nice and tight. So now we can turn our sleeve back in the right way, and you'll be able to see that we've got a nice clean seam. So now what you're going to do is repeat that exact same process on your other sleeve. Here's one I prepared earlier. Disregard all my ends that I still haven't sewn in. So you should have the exact same look on your other sleeve. So go ahead and do that, and then come back here and we will begin on the edging for our bottom hem. All right, once you're ready to get started on the edging for your bottom hem, we are going to take our yarn. I'm using the same color. You can use whatever color you like. Starting off with a slip knot, popping that onto our hook, and we're now going to join our yarn into this corner. So you might want to flip your cardigan kind of to the side like this for now. And I'm just going through this corner space and joining in with a slip stitch. Now we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing as we've just done on our sleeve cuffs. So we're going to chain 11. Once you've chained 11, we are going to single crochet in the second chain from our hook. So skipping that first chain, finding that second one, and completing a single crochet. And we are then, of course, just going to be single crocheting in every chain all the way to the end of the row. Once you've finished that row, we are then going to find the next stitch on our front panel and going in with a slip stitch. Again, this is exactly what we've just done on our sleeve cuffs. Now we're going to find the next stitch on our front panel and go in with another slip stitch. We're then going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now we're going to complete one single crochet through the back loop only in every stitch all the way to the end of the row, remembering to skip those 2 slip stitches at the beginning. Once you get to the end of the row, we're just going to chain 1 and turn our work once again. And now we're just going to continue repeating that step until we get all the way over here to the end of our second front panel. Okay, so again, we're just repeating exactly what we did for our sleeve cuff. The only difference is instead of working around in a circle, we're just going to be working it flat all the way across until we get to the end of our second front panel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I will meet you back here once I'm done. All right, here I am at the end of my bottom edging. So I'm up to my last stitch. So all I'm going to do now is slip stitch into that last corner space, just like that. And now I'm going to fasten off my yarn. So we can cut our yarn, pull that through and fasten it off. just like that. So that is now your bottom edging complete. So you should have something that looks like this running all the way along the bottom of your cardigan. Now, there is also an optional step that I just want to mention before we get started on the inner edging, and that option is to add buttons. Now, I'm going to be adding buttons to my cardigan. You absolutely do not have to, but if you do want to add them, I am using 3 25mm buttons. So if you are going to add buttons, you need to consider that before you get started, because we will need to add in some buttonholes, of course. First of all, you want to position your buttons kind of where you think you might like them to sit. So obviously you want to space them out nice and evenly, and remembering that there is going to be a strip of edging running down the center here, so these buttons will actually be sewn on to the edging. Once you've done that, you want to take some stitch markers. So if you're using 3 buttons, you will need 3 stitch markers, and you're going to place these stitch markers through your cardigan, marking out roughly where your button is going to sit. And this is just going to help us determine where we place our buttonholes. So spacing them out as evenly as you can. What we now want to do is take our 4mm hook and the yarn that we have been using, and starting off with a slip knot, of course, we are now going to join our yarn into this bottom corner stitch here. So just joining with a slip stitch, nice and easy. And then we are going to chain 11. Once you've done that, we are of course going to skip that first stitch and complete a single crochet in that second chain from our hook, and in every chain until we reach the end of the row. Once you've done that, you are going to find that next stitch and slip stitch into there. And then of course we're finding that next stitch and slip stitching into there as well. We're then going to chain 1, turn our work, and we'll now be working back along this way in the back loop only, exactly as we have been for our bottom edging. Okay, so finding that first stitch, going through the back loop only, and completing 1 single crochet in every stitch, all the way till the end of the row. And we're just going to repeat this stitch pattern until we reach our first stitch marker. All right, so I am now up to my first stitch marker. So for me, the stitch my stitch marker was in just happened to be the stitch that my second slip stitch went into. So that is totally fine, obviously. So now we can just chain 1 and turn our work. And now what we're going to do is create our first buttonhole. So we want to complete a single crochet in the back loop only in the next 3 stitches, just as normal. Now we want to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to then skip the next 4 stitches and continue crocheting in the back loop only in the remaining 3 stitches. Just like that, and you'll now see that you've got a buttonhole. So now we are just going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we can now continue working our edging. So again, in the back loop, completing a single crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then once you get to your chains, we are just going to complete 1 single crochet in each chain stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. And now I'm just going to continue working 1 single crochet in the back loop in the remaining 3 stitches. Just like that. Now I'm going to remove that stitch marker, so we don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to continue working as normal. So I'll now slip stitch into that next stitch, slip stitch into the next stitch, chain one, turn my work, and now I can continue working my edging along this way. So now what we're going to do is continue working our edging until we get to our second stitch marker, and then we're going to repeat that exact same process to create our next buttonhole. And you would repeat this process as many times as you need to create as many buttonholes as you need. So if you've decided you want to use 4 buttons, 5 buttons, 6 buttons, however many buttons you like, you would just repeat this process until you have completed all of your buttonholes. Now, keep in mind that once we have finished crocheting into our bottom ribbing section, we are then going to be working into the ends of the rows on our front panel. So the process is still exactly the same, but you just need to be a little bit more mindful of how you space out your stitches because you don't have those individual stitches to guide you. So make sure you are still spacing your stitches about as far apart as you would if you were crocheting into normal stitches, just to keep everything looking nice and consistent and tidy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and finish this entire ribbing. So remembering you will need to complete your buttonholes where your stitch markers are, and then you will just continue working your ribbing all the way down your first front panel, along the top of the back panel, and then you'll be working back down the second front panel. So I will meet you once we get back down here and have finished our inner edging. Okay, so I have just completed my last row of my inner edging. I've already cut my yarn, so now I'm just going to fasten off. And that is it for our inner edging. So your cardigan is pretty much finished now. If you aren't adding any buttons, then yours is done, so you can sew in all your remaining ends and enjoy. If you are adding buttons like I am, we now need to sew on our buttons. So all we're going to do is make sure our cardigan is sitting nice and evenly and that our bottom hemline matches up on both sides, because we want to now line up our buttons with our buttonholes. So I can see that my bottom edge is nice and lined up, so I can go ahead and attach my first button. So you can use whatever yarn or thread you like for this step. I'm just going in with some white and also a needle. You want to make sure you're using a needle that fits through the holes on your button. So I'm just going to take my white yarn and cut a little bit of a length. So I'm just threading that yarn into my needle. I'm going to line up my first button next to my first buttonhole. And now I'm just going to go in and sew on this button. Okay, so here's my first button that I've just sewn on. So now what I'm going to do is flip it over. I'm going to remove my needle and I'm just going to tie this off at the back to make sure it's nice and secure. And then I'm just going to trim that yarn up. Those ends will then be sewn in just like the rest of my ends that I need to sew in. And now we can just repeat that exact same step for all of our other buttons. So remembering to make sure that everything is lined up nicely so you know you're placing your buttons in the correct position. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. That is the very last step of this cardigan other than sewing in my ends. So once I have finished everything off, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to try it on for you guys and show you exactly what it looks like. I'm so excited. But I will see you very soon. Well guys, there we have it. Our cardigan is now complete. I'll give you a little twirl. Thank you so much for joining in my first ever cowl. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys. If you did enjoy this cowl, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, along with all the other videos to help other people find the cowl, and tells YouTube that this is really great content. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely amazing. If you did joining the Cal and you have finished your cardigans, I would absolutely love to see them. Please don't forget to tag me on social media. All my accounts are linked in the description down below. And while you're there, don't forget to check out the Maker website for all your crochet and knitting supplies. Everything you see in this Cal is available on the Maker website, so you can get everything you need there, besides the buttons. The buttons I had to outsource. I would also love it if you could subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so you will be notified of all my future videos. But that wraps up the final part of the Cal. Thank you once again for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.